Welcome back to another One of None podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Andrew Ganong.
I'm your other host, Dr. Jonah Casella.
And today we have another very special guest, one of our close buddies from college, none other than X Bennett. I call him X, we call him X, but his name is Xavier Bennett. He's our good buddy from college, and he lives the lifestyle that we talk about on here, and he lives it to a T. I would say a lot of our friends that we have on here are uniquely different than us in some way, shape, or form. X pretty much rides the same wave that we do with the intensity that we do. So it was only right that we got him on the pod. So welcome, X. Good to have you on here, man.
I'm glad to be here, boys.
Yeah, it's always the whole point of the pod, right? Is that we have all these different people on here that are completely different from us, but live in the same lifestyle, and that's kind of the point. We show that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, as long as you're putting it in, putting that work in, then you can have your success in your own way. And so we're gonna get into your success and the hard work that you put in. But let's get it started how we always do. Kick us off with where you're from, like where you grew up, and a little bit about how you grew up, like parenting and stuff like that.
Yeah, too easy. Well, I'm from a very unique area. So I was actually born in West Virginia. Most people do not know that. I grew up in the tri-state area of Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. It's a really, really small circle there where that like top tip of West Virginia touches. I was actually born there. I grew up in Ohio in a very rural town, kind of like Jonah. The school that I went to, I think the graduating class was, just right around 100. So I grew up there, playing sports. I was kind of like the runt of the family there. So all my cousins are like 6 foot, and there's me, 5 foot, nothing, Xavier. So growing up was pretty interesting. And then after, so I went to grade school, I think it's K through 8th grade in Ohio. And then I moved to Pennsylvania where I started high school. So I went from a high school that was graduating 100 to a high school that graduated closer to 800 when I moved to Butler, Pennsylvania, which is about, 45 minutes north of Pittsburgh. So that was a big transition from moving from, small town to 6A football or whatever they call it there. But, my parenting style, so I grew up in, my parents were kind of similar to Jonas. I think your parents were split, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So parents split, very young age, kind of got raised by my mom. But her parenting style she was very, very old fashioned. She was like the epitome of discipline and hard work. So she instilled it at a very young age that, you're going to have to work for pretty much everything that you do. Like, you're a minority in a primarily, pretty white area. So you're going to have to work a little bit harder than most to just do the bare minimum. So, whether it comes from, doing pretty much every single chore there is, like, to heat our house in the winter, for example, I had to go out, split the wood, bring the wood inside just to, heat the house during the winter. So just like that kind of work ethic that my mom instilled in me, she's like, hey, yeah, if you don't want to split the wood, I guess you can, it's going to be a cold night for you.
Bundle up.
Yeah, wear some sweats if you want to stay warm, boy. So just like, that mindset from a young age, at the time I really couldn't stand a woman. But the older I get, the more I'm like, she was on to something. I really, she was on to something. It's something that I thank her to this day. My dad, great human as well. So I moved from, my mom lives in Ohio, and then I moved in high school to live with my dad just because it's just kind of how it works usually. Once you get to a certain age, you're like, mom's annoying, dad's cool. I need somebody a little bit more relaxed who's not going to nag me. So I ended up moving with my dad. Dad's probably one of they're like polar opposites when it comes to people. He's like very outgoing. My mom's very to the T, doesn't like too much small talk. My dad's like the person who will come to the grocery store and talk your face off. So that was a transition growing up, but they both from a young age kind of still instilled that confidence into me, and that you're going to pretty much have to work harder than everybody to just be at the bare minimum. So, I mean, I could go on for days on some of the childhood stories, but I grew up, in a very unique environment. Didn't grow up very wealthy at all. Like I said, single mom, single dad. Never graduated college, but they did a really good job at making sure that I didn't understand or kind of see just how poor we were, if that makes sense. But I had a great lifestyle. I can't complain.
Oh yeah, I was gonna go. I see a lot of your mom and dad in you, X, from knowing you. That's the cool thing about this podcast is like I've known you for how many years now, and I haven't had the chance to like sit down and ask you about your like upbringing, and like the same thing with you asking me. And I've known Jonah for a little bit longer, but I've learned so much about Jonah through this podcast just because of like us talking about upbringings and stuff. So I see a lot of the qualities of your mom and your dad in you, but I think a thing that you already touched on was it's such a cool thing that we can like reflect now and thank our parents for the way that they raised us, even at the time we hated it. Like the work ethic that your mother instilled in you was so worth it now, especially in this generation where nobody wants to work. And this is by far, what is it? The Gen Zers are probably the laziest generation that we have. And this is the time where it's the most important to have a work ethic. And I only know that side of you really is like the intense side, because a lot of our time spent together, you, me, and Jonah, Ty, Chris, Brady, all those guys, is usually in the form of working out. Yeah. So I really only knew you, and obviously you'd come over to the rugby house and hang out with our crib and stuff, and BS a little bit. But a lot of the time that we spent together, all of us in college, was spent around working out and trying to be as big as possible and work as hard as we could. And so I only knew that super intense side of you, but I can understand both sides of your mother and your father raising you, which is super cool. And that's what I love about this pod is we get to know each other on a deeper level. But JC, I didn't mean to cut you off. Really, go ahead.
No, it's all good. I was just gonna make comment that I like what you said about how your parents tried to make it so that you didn't know that you were poor or middle class or whatever. You know what I mean? Because my parents were the same way. Same with my mom. She didn't have barely had a dime to her name, but you would never know with the birthday gifts and everything we got.
Yeah.
So it's interesting now looking back and seeing as an adult and you as a parent, which we'll get into, kind of appreciating that and respecting our parents a little more, like Andrew was saying. Yeah. So now, stepping into the next thing now. So like Andrew said, we all met at college at IUP through rugby. So the first time I met you was freshman year at a rugby practice, and the same with Ty, because you guys were still playing at that time. And then we all kind of just formed this bond over like lifting and sports and just kind of going hard, like Andrew was saying. So let's get into a little bit about where we are now. And so let's start with your why. And you're a hard worker when we knew you at IUP, and you've been a dad for a long time now. So your why has, like we've talked about with other people, has probably shifted a lot.
Huge.
Over the years.
It's huge. Yeah.
So,
that's what I was going to dive into here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the most unique things in going to college. Most people don't know. So yeah, I've always been the underdog. I'm 5'6". I've always had that like kind of tenacity about me. My cousins are, like I said, 6'2". They all played football, played basketball. Then there's me, like the kind of the runt of the litter essentially. So I always felt like I had something to prove to everybody, and I've always been that kind of a black sheep, and I always question everything and like like why are we doing this? I'm just always questioning certain things. But when it comes to hard work, it really the why switched completely. I went from freshman year to being an absolute, we're all degenerates freshman year. You guys were a little bit better of degenerates because you guys are on a pretty good track to be doctors, but some of us other folks, we embodied the IUP name there. So freshman year, a lot of things changed. So like towards the end of freshman year, uh, I was dating my high school sweetheart. Like right before college, we kind of broke up. And then like during college, we kind of like we start talking again. Boom, end of freshman year, I find out I'm having a kid. So my why changed pretty quickly, and it's not something that happened overnight for sure. I mean, because when you're young, when you're 19 years old, and someone's like, "Hey, I'm pregnant," you're like, I don't know what any of that means. Like, I'm not pregnant. You're pregnant. You don't really grow up until like you actually physically kind of hold that child in your hands, and that was I think having my kid that summer going into sophomore year was probably one of the most challenging things that I've ever had to go through, because I had to drop out for a semester, almost a year. Most people don't know that. Like I've taken some classes online. I had to do a couple things. I had to work crazy jobs. Listen, to working in the gas fields while also doing classes, while also trying to raise this kid as well. So I faced a lot of adversity, and my why completely shifted because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and I was just kind of like floating through life. But once you have a child and realize that person, like, there is someone watching you at all times. You may not feel like you as an adult, you don't really have people kind of checking you, but when you have a kid, everything changes because there's always someone watching you. They're watching you every step. So you have to be the best role model you possibly can. So, when your kid's looking up, you're like, wow, my dad's running marathons now. Like, he's in the military as well while he's in school. He's going to go be a lawyer. Just all these different things that I had to face kind of growing up. Just wanted to show him, like, hey, pretty much anything's possible. It's all about mindset. As soon as you tell yourself that you can do something, you gotta be able to do it. I think the biggest thing I've ever been told or heard is it's too complicated. It's one of the statements that I can't stand. I'm like, I don't think it's that complicated. It's just something that people say. It's not that complicated. You just gotta kind of impose massive action instead of just thinking and being paralyzed by analysis. You just gotta go for it. So my biggest why is my kid, man. That's why I do the things I do now. I'm like, hey, Jonah, let's do a marathon. Everyone's like, why are we running a marathon? I'm like, it's just something we have to do, man. We're getting to that age where we got to keep, putting things on the calendar. Like, we're at a point where our careers where I wouldn't say things are starting to slow down, but,
Stabilize.
We're like, all right, we're getting comfortable. We're getting pretty, I wouldn't say complacent, but we've reached kind of like the end, not the end point, but where we thought we were going to be. If that makes sense.
Right. So then it's like, now what? And we're the type of people that we say that, all right, now what? What's the next thing? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your why is a big one. Like we have our own why, and that's going to change for sure as time goes on. And I know that when I have kids, it's definitely going to be, for them. So I figured that's what yours was. I can't even imagine that. And it makes total sense, right? Because if I had a kid, like, it would be that much more motivating to go out and do hard shit because, like you said, you want to show them that you can do it. It doesn't matter where you're from. Doesn't matter that you're 5'6", 5'7", like we are, or 6'1" and 220 pounds. You can still go out there and run half a marathon. You know what I mean? So yep, I figured that's what your why was going to be. Did you want to add something, Drew?
Yeah, I think as far as long as I've known you, X, I feel like your maturity, you and Ty were always way more mature than us at the time. I think we probably leveled out at some point where we've all met some equal maturity, but I think that you having your kid forced that on you earlier. And that says something too. I always, whenever I talk about emotional maturity, I think with death early in my life, that forced me to grow up quite a bit in a different way. And I think the same thing applies to you too. And there's something really cool about that when you're faced or you're met with adversity, and not in a bad way. I know how much you cherish your boy. But I think at the time it was a shock to the system, and it forced you to really have like a gut check, and that enabled you to be very mature at a very young age. And so you probably are ahead of your pack in terms of that. So I think that's a lot of, obviously you said this is your why, but I think that's where you have a lot of your fire and your intensity from too. Is like, you kind of, Jonah explained it the best way. He said, what's next? What's next? That's the way I think of you, X. It's like, you're always like looking for the next thing. Something. And like, we would go and like, we'd go after like a hard workout or something, or in our group message, we're texting. And I know that once the marathon's over or the half Ironman's over, you're going to sit and text the next day like, yo, what's next for us? What are we training for next? That's always you. And I think that alludes to kind of like your intensity and your maturity. And I think that kind of stemmed from the adversity you faced kind of early on in life. Yeah. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like that's spot on?
No, yeah, man. I mean, that's 100% spot on. I mean, even just like before even having a kid, I've had to face, so many different adversities. Like I said, I grew up as a black guy in a pretty predominantly white area where, racial issues are, pretty high. So I just never really had a chip on my shoulder. I always felt like I had something to prove. So, like, I'm not even kidding you. Like, when I was running across the finish line of my first marathon, I was like, all right, this was cool for 10 seconds. And what's next? We need something, man.
Yeah, it's so true. You're the reason that I even ran the Pittsburgh Marathon, because we were all hanging out at Ty's, and you and Dylan were like, yeah, we're going to run Pittsburgh's Marathon in 3 months, because you guys had done one in Ohio.
Yeah.
Or Cleveland or something.
Cleveland, yeah.
And, yeah. And I was like, I've always been thinking about like wanting to like have that like on the bucket list, like run a marathon. And you guys were like, well, put your money where your mouth is. Let's do it together. And I remember when I brought it up to Aubrey, she was like, why? Why do you need
That's exactly why I should.
Like, why do you need to do that? Like, maybe you should start with the half. And, I really considered doing just a half. And I was like, she's right. Like, I haven't ran anything more than like a couple 100 meters. Like I've done a couple 5Ks, and then I was like talking to you guys about it. And this is why it's so important to have friends that don't, that push you and don't let you be soft. Because I was like, I think I'm just going to do the half. And you guys were like, you're going to regret that if you do the half. Like, just do the full. Like, you're going to get through 13 miles and be like, I can't believe I didn't do the full marathon. And you guys were so right. And that just goes to like show how important it is to have a tight circle of friends, and like the group text message that we have where we don't let each other be soft. It's so important. And it's like that mentality and holding each other accountable is awesome. So thank you for that, because now I'm addicted to endurance stuff, and
you gotta have a look back. I remember exactly what I said to you when you told me, maybe we should do the half. And I'm like, so what do you just read half a book and then put the book back and say, hey guys, I read half this book and it was great. No one tells anybody they read half a book.
Don't knock on the half marathon. I just finished one.
You ran at like a 7-something pace.
Yeah, you're cooking. It's different when you got like your other friends that are doing the full, and then you're the only one doing the half.
Yeah. That's fair. I do want to ask X. So I think that there has to be something else that drives you. And I know a big part of it is your family, your upbringing, but what drives the X that makes you want to do backflips when you're doing workouts and you're like backflipping and then clean and jerking 135 for reps? Like, what where does that intensity come from? Is it for people that struggle? I think, and that's a big part of why we have this podcast. People struggle with waking up in the morning and finding motivation. And I roll over at 5:30 and open up a snap from you at like midnight, and you're like backflipping and doing push-ups, and like, where does that drive come from? Has it always been innate to you, or has that been something that you've really developed over time?
Yeah, so it's something I've developed over time because, like growing up, I really lacked confidence. Like I knew I always had the ability, but I always doubted myself with pretty much everything. So that would end up leading me to do like things halfway, or like start something and not finish it because I would, kind of overthink it. Like one of the big things I live by now is just, no paralysis over analysis. Like you just have to do it. Like take massive action now instead of like thinking about the plan to think about the plan. Just take one step, start to do it. So over the years, I've just been like, stacking bricks to prove to myself that like, if someone has done it before, you know, outside of extreme circumstances like LeBron James, that doesn't count. You can do it. Like there's nothing that's stopping you. The only person that's stopping you is you. So over the years, I've had to just like continuously do things that challenge my own mindset to say like, why not? Why not you? Seriously, why can't you do that? If you can't think of 3 good things why you can't do that, then you probably can. So that's when like the endurance thing really, really kicked off for me, because you can't really hide from anything when it comes to endurance training. Like you run those miles, there's like, all right, I have to run 5 miles today. There is no like, oh yeah, well I'll just run 3. You have to run 5 miles. Where like an intense workout, it's like, well, I'm supposed to do this. I could probably just kind of work my way through it and go through the motions. Where 5 miles is 5 miles. it's gonna suck whether you do it fast or whether you do it slow. So just like putting things out there that you have to finish, and then once you do that, you're building a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say that you are. And that's just been the biggest thing for me. Like I wasted so many years of potential in like high school wrestling, for example. Like my coaches thought I was going to be this great wrestler, but I always doubted myself. And the moment you doubt yourself, it's when everything creeps in, and you're not the person you say you are, because you've already told yourself you're not.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how I've worked my way up the chain as I've gone. Like I don't know something, you're going to figure it out. Somebody else has figured it out before you. So even with this, with my current job, I work in medical sales. I never in a million years that I'd be in an OR talking to surgeons, and kind of walking them through how to use my device, or the mechanism of action with it. But here I am.
I think that's great, and I think you hit on a couple of really important things that people should pay attention to listen to this. Is the self-doubt, because everybody has that, and it can be paralyzing, like you're saying, to the point where you give up before you ever even took a step. And we all go through it. I go through it on a daily basis. I went through it on my bike workout that I have to finish after this, like doing threshold workouts, and you're a couple minutes into a few minute workout and you're in so much pain and you're thinking, I can't do this anymore. And you let that, as soon as you start letting that creep in, can paralyze you and stop you in your tracks. And then it, when you do that, you lose confidence, and then it's just this cycle. And so it's really hard for people to get off the couch and get going, or to pick up the book and study or whatever, because you just have so much doubt before you ever even start. And so I think you hit on that. It's just important to go, just take the step, just get out of bed. Don't think about it. Just do it, like we've talked about before. And that's the most important thing you can do every day, is just start and figure it out as you go.
I think X is going to outperform. With that mentality, you're going to outperform anybody, really, because like you're just going to be the most consistent every single time. And we've talked about that on previous podcasts, how important consistency is, even if it's 1%, right? And Jonah, you made a good analogy one time. It's like if you are going one direction and you slightly go off track just by 1 degree, and that compounds over time, that eventually is going to turn into a complete, 180, right? But that also is true for consistency too. If you're making small percentage changes every single day towards your goal, you're going to outperform everybody else, And I think of X too as like you just don't have a filter when it comes to like making, not with like speaking, but with making decisions about stuff. You're always a yes man, and I am too. Like you probably influenced me in that, where I just, if you told me tomorrow that you wanted to do like a 20-mile ruck, I'd probably do it, just because, like, I don't know why, like that's the way I think of you. You're just the yes man. You're down for everything. You're always like, just like, why not? Why don't we just go and do it? And I think that's awesome. And I think a lot of us need to be more like that. I think that's noble and not paralyzed by fear. And I think something you alluded to earlier too, X, was you have reasons why you could fail. The upbringing. I mean, I'm north of the city too, X. I know it's a predominantly white area, and whether the upbringing with your parents, being divorced and not having much money growing up, or whatever the case is, I don't think I would have ever known that unless you told me. And that says a lot about who you are. Besides, maybe knowing you're from Butler County. I think I'm from Wexford and Cranberry, and people have stereotypes of that. Although I didn't grow up with a lot of money either, but we had our high school rivalries and stuff, and we always had assumptions about different school districts. But aside from that, I would have never guessed that. And that says something about your character, right? It says that you carry yourself with a certain amount of charisma and respect, and you hold your head high, and you place a lot of priority on work ethic, and you are who you say you are, and that's important. And I think that a lot of people nowadays in this generation are victimized, which we've also talked about in podcasts before. And I don't see that with you, and that's incredibly important because I don't really need to speak why that's important, right? Like we need to have stronger willed men around here and raising their kids the right way, based off morals and strong values and with good work ethics. And I think that's something that you embody, all of those qualities. So I like that a lot about you, and I know that the rest of our crew appreciates that about you too. But I think that you're definitely you're crushing it, and whatever you're doing, whatever it is that you decide to do, you're gonna go balls to the wall for. So
thanks, Bear. Boy, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you actually, before I ever paid attention to Cameron Haynes, you actually made a comment, X, when we did the 20-mile peak run for the Pittsburgh Marathon, me, you, and Dylan. And I think we were talking about like Nick Bear and tattoos and stuff like that. And you were talking about, I got to get, no one cares, work harder. Or you did. Did you get that?
Yeah,
you
it's
did
on my
get that.
thigh.
Yeah, you did get that. And we were talking about it. And you truly do embody that, because just like Andrew said, like it doesn't even matter where you grew up. I never knew how you grew up. I had no idea. I knew you were from Butler, like Andrew said.
Yeah.
I didn't know middle class, high class, poor, whatever. And it didn't matter. We didn't need to know that, because you didn't try to, victimize yourself or anything like that. And it didn't matter that, you're black and we're white. Like that was never an excuse for you to not work your ass off. You know what I mean? Like you truly embodied that no one cares. Just keep working. And as long as you're working hard, you're good by me, right? That's our whole group. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you're male or female. But if you're busting your ass, welcome to it. You're good by me. Join the group. And so I think you really embody that. And yeah, I agree with Andrew in that I know that, just like I feel with Andrew, the days where I'm slacking off, I literally apologize to you in the group today. That was directed towards you, because I like slacked off yesterday and I felt bad about it. I know that Andrew's grinding when I'm not, and I know that you're always grinding too. Like you're the two guarantees, and a couple other guys in our group as well. But I always like think about you guys. I'm like, I can't sit around here. Like they're out there.
Andrew would say here, get your soft,
Yeah. Ty and X were always the guys, at least for me, that I feel like I had to try to like I wanted to be more like in terms of work ethic, because in college, the way that it made me feel bad was I'd be out boozing and like I'd text Ty or X to come out, and like they would just be like, "No, I'm chilling in for the night," and I'm like, "Dang, like they're actually being like adults right now, and I'm out here like at a bar right now trying to drink beers with the homies, and they're gonna wake up in the morning, and I'm gonna meet them at the gym at the same exact time and be hungover, and they're gonna be well slept." And I just feel like they set the standard for our friend group, and obviously there's some others in there that helped with that, but me and Jonah were the youngest of the crew, right? Like Brady, Chris, you, and Ty were all older than us, and so to hang, we had to have some level of maturity that didn't make us look like idiots all the time, and also we had to have some work ethic to compete with y'all too, or to at least hang in with y'all. And so that was nice to have that. And I talked about this last time too. Last podcast with Josh was the rule of 33%. And 33% of the time, you should be hanging out with people that are above you and that you want to be with. And so it's a gut check. And thankfully, we crossed paths in college. Like, I can't imagine what it would have been like if I just hung around a bunch of, like, losers. And I don't even know where I'd be at right now. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you on this podcast. So I think that I reflect and I thank God that we crossed paths, all of us, because it created, a lifelong friendship. There are people that I was really close with in college that I thought I'd be friends with forever. And then now I don't talk to them anymore. Right. But here we are years after college now, and we're still homies and still getting after it together. And, that's awesome. That's something to be grateful for sure.
Iron sharpens irons, boys. Trust me, I was using you guys as some jet fuel as well once I was like going through the training that I had to go through to get into medical sales. I was like, Andrew and Jonah were grinders in college with the books. Like, you guys were nose down, like nothing else really mattered. You guys were like, yeah, I'll have my beers, but I'll still go get my buzz studying, and it's happening.
Yeah.
So like, when I was just like going through that training, I was like, man, those guys can grind, so I can grind. Like, they're both doctors, so let's get to it.
Iron sharpens iron.
That's right. So let's get into where you're at now. I mean, and we didn't even bring this up, but you're military. Are you still military?
Yeah, I've been in for it'll be 12 years in October.
Gotcha. And what branch was it?
Army National Guard.
Right. And you've been in that since college.
Yeah, obviously. 17. Yeah, I joined when I was in high school. I was 17.
Yeah, so on top of everything else, you're also maintaining that.
Yeah. It was busy. It was fun explaining to my professors like what was going on during my college career. They're like, "Do you sleep?" I'm like, "Yeah, like 3 or 4 hours, between everything else that's going on."
Yeah, and now, this is just recent that you got in with J&J in medical sales, just in like the past year.
Yeah.
It was a super competitive position. So just go into all, what all was involved, like the interview process and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give a little background of like what I was doing like right after college. I graduated right as COVID happened, so that was great. I graduated in 2019. I'm like, wow, I finally did it. It took me a while, faced a lot of adversity, and then boom, COVID smacked me right in the mouth. But I was like, well, I never really asked, like, never say why me. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous to me. So powered forward. Worked in like a tech job briefly, and then I became a military recruiter for 2 years. After doing that, I got picked up by a private government contractor doing some recruiting for them. So I was traveling all around the Southwest border working with the CPB. The company also had a lot of other contracts with like the FBI, ATF, but I was primarily with the Border Patrol, working along the Southwest border, staffing a lot of their processing facilities for all the craziness that's going on down there. That's a whole different story. And then randomly, I connected with. I'm big on connections. Like, if I'm thinking about somebody, I'm gonna text them and be like, "Hey, man, like, hope all is well." Like, I'm gonna text them like right then and there. So I always keep in contact with people that are good people, people that you want to keep in your circle, because it's just so easy nowadays with like social media. It's not like I have to write you guys a postcard. But back to that, talking to my buddy, he's like, "Yo, dude, I was just golfing with this guy who works in medical sales. He said he's looking for good guys." So I just kind of like, shot him your name and said that you're basically a stud, yada yada yada. And I'm like, dude, I'm pretty happy where I'm at right now. Like, I'm making great money. This job's work from home. I travel a decent amount, but it was great. But he reached out to me again. And I was like, yeah, let's hear it, man. Like, I'm always down to see what's out there. I was getting a little bit complacent. Had a conversation with him, and he's like, dude, you should apply to this position out in Pittsburgh. I think you'd be a great fit for it. 7 interview stages later, J&J does not mess around. It was a intense interview. I had to like apply. You have to send in your video. You have to, talk to an RSM. After an RSM, you have to do a shadow. After a shadow, you have to go on a panel. After a panel, you have to like do this personality test, pass this background check. You have to beat out thousands of candidates for one position. It's one of the most competitive fields that you can possibly get into, because there's human lives with the products that you use kind of on the line. So after getting through this crazy interview stage, you're like, whew, I can finally take a break. Not a chance. They then send you to it's like a mini medical school boot camp. So imagine like finals week in college, but for about 3 months straight. So, you're studying anatomy, physiology every single day. You're taking an exam every single day as well on, different parts of the body, different procedures, different applications of your device. It's intense. So you're taking an exam, and every day you have to pass this exam, or your career kind of rides on it. So even through that, I was like taking care of my grandma because she was passing away, and I was her power of attorney. And so I was like trying to handle all that. And then J&J actually gave me some bereavement leave, because they're like, you cannot do both of these at the same time. That's crazy. You will. There's just no way. There's not enough hours in the day, because you're studying for 18 hours a day. So they give me like 30 days off, came back, crushed everything else. Finally, ended up getting like an award for, I forget what it was at the end of the course, but it was a crazy experience. And then finally I graduated that, and that's where I'm at today. So I'm in the operating room. I work for one of the largest medical companies in the world, Johnson & Johnson, specifically Ethicon. Our products used in 90% of operating rooms across the world. We're in pretty much every single procedure that you could possibly imagine. I don't want to nerd out when it comes to devices, but suture, energy, biosurgery, pretty much everything you can name. So, I mean, today I was in a colorectal case, and then this afternoon I was in a lab talking to cardiovascular surgeons in residence. So it's an intense job.
So you're not just doing one specific or like a couple of specific pieces of like devices, or you're just doing like a ton of different devices?
So we're unique. We have one of the largest bags in med tech, because we're about 100 yards wide and a foot deep in every single category of surgery. So we just have so many different things in our line that I have to kind of be an expert on a million different things. Whereas like an ortho rep, they're just on ortho. So like before every procedure, I kind of got to like, review my notes, make sure I'm pretty clinically ready for whichever device they're going to use, different applications, procedures, questions they may ask, things that can go wrong, because you can't really hesitate when you're in surgery. Like today, 100%. I was in surgery, and the guy was like, hey, this button's kind of clicky. And I'm like, yeah, you got to do X, Y, and Z. Like, there is no like, let me check my phone. You need to know, patient's on the table.
Right. And that's a lot. There's a lot more pressure involved with that, which is a privilege, but and like we have reps, there's a ton of reps because it's for lots of pharmaceuticals in the eye industry, and then contacts and other devices and things like that. And, I'll kind of drill the new reps. Like if it's a new product or something that they're trying to promote, like I'm going to ask you questions, because I'm not going to just give this to my patient or try and prescribe this or push this on somebody unless I feel really comfortable with it. And that's on my level, which does not risk life. What you're doing is very intense and a lot of pressure involved with that. Obviously a lot of reward too. And so, yeah, I mean, I could totally understand how you need to stay sharp on that, which, it's going to get easier with time too, as you know, because you'll get more, comfortable and familiar with things. But yeah, that's pretty cool though, that you're getting to do that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
X, have you seen has there been a lot of change since you've been at J&J, like in terms of the bag per se of what types of equipment you're selling? Or is it pretty consistent?
So for the specific company that I work for Ethicon, which is it's our Ethicon's pretty different from some of the other, but J&J they do constantly acquire new companies, and then rinse repeat. Like if something's not working, then they'll kind of off shell it. But mine's been very consistent. Yeah, there's upgrades and things that are with advancements in technology. Yeah, those things are going to happen. But the only thing you can really guarantee is change. So it's the only constant is change, because things are constantly advancing and new technologies emerging and things are getting better, which is great for the medical community. So
Yeah, I went to a recent conference on it was called the Hip Symposium. So it was a pretty intimate group of people, and we had some of the best surgeons in the world talking about hip arthroscopies, non-arthritic hip pain, hip surgeries, all that. Obviously, the ortho world is my world, but in the ortho world alone, there's so much, and there's so many um, different types of materials that are used. I mean, there's implants. They go on and on and on, and
yeah.
suture types, all that stuff is crazy.
So suture, like with Ethicon, we're the gold standard of suture, but I do work in a lot of ortho cases. But the technology within ortho, yeah, that's one thing that's constantly changing.
I mean, these guys they're shaping implants. Basically, I mean, you're even doing it without a whole lot of work, which is a great thing. And the specificity of it too is like they're going so precise down to the very exact bone shape and size for the patient, that it's literally within a degree of the perfect implant. And so now ortho, I mean, the likelihood that you have a successful case is pretty high, just because of how specific they are. Now you're talking about like if there's lack of success, it's probably due to some type of external factor. But I mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy the stuff that they're doing nowadays. And so I can only imagine how dialed you have to be for knowing all this stuff going into
those
there.
ortho guys, they're crazy. Like I work with some surgeons that are very, very skilled, and like they can turn over 8 knee surgeries in 6 hours. Like the guys are money. And like you said, the precision on like the size to the specific patient to specific need is amazing. Like, and they're on the spot.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and they're walking the day of too. Like with a brand new knee, brand new hip, you're walking day of.
Yeah, 23 hours is the rule.
Yeah,
because everything's shifting towards outpatient. Because as long as you hit that 23-hour mark, it's considered outpatient. So you can do it same day.
I'm seeing them 2 days later too. That's a cool thing. I would see them day of if I could, but they keep them in the hospital for a while.
It's becoming more and more, less and less invasive, which is great.
Everything is
risk of infection, better patient outcomes.
Yeah, it's wild nowadays.
All right, so I know that you have more stuff to do tonight than just our podcast, even though you've had a full day already. So I'm not going to keep you too much longer. We'll wrap it up soon. But so yeah, you're killing it now with this new job. Hopefully you're enjoying it too, and raising your kid, and then also still training hard. You're also doing the Penn State 70.3 with me, and then the next month you're doing Maine 70.3 with a couple other guys. And so the grind does not stop.
It was one of those why not questions. It was like, well, I'm not leaving Jonah hanging because all of you guys can't do it. So one, I'm going to do it with Jonah, and I think that one's going to be more fun, to be honest with you. But
that one's going to be hard for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be harder. And yeah, why not? What else are we doing? Drinking beer in July? Like, come on. I think I can figure it out. I'll be already like kind of dialed in anyways with like I'll be peaking at that time. I'll have enough time to rest. So
I love it.
You gonna come pick me up and take my
yeah.
bike down, X?
So Dylan was saying, he's like, let's drive down, grab your bike, and then drive to. I'm like, Dylan, that's crazy.
Yeah, Dylan was wild. He's like, can you care if I stay with you for a couple of days and we can head back? So I'm like, Dylan, you're not coming down here to get my bike. Dude was so persistent. I don't know why. I mean, trust me, I'm game for anything crazy, but that's
We're gonna do that. We're gonna do a relay. I've already scouted out some relays. I was listening to your last podcast with Josh, and you guys were talking about doing a relay, which I've done, and those are amazing. I ran from LA to San Diego with a team of I think it was like 7 or 8 people, and it was probably the coolest experience and one of the hardest races I've ever done. But it was amazing.
There's a 70.3 here. I think it's in like, I think it's west of me. It might be southwest of me. But
Pensacola.
yeah, probably Pensacola. But yeah, I mean, there's there's a nice 70.3 that if y'all drove down, y'all could drive together and then just stay with me, and that'd be fun. But anyways, yeah, onward. That's on your radar. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was already today. I don't know why. I think it's because I'm listening to Cameron Haynes' book. I was like, all right, I have to do an ultra eventually here. Even if it's just, I was thinking about just doing, it'd be cool to do like, just like a 30 and do, you know what I mean? Like have people run it with you or like pace you out. But yeah, the relay is something I'm definitely interested in. Not sure if we'll, be able to make it work for the California one, but
nah, we can plan something. That's a logistic nightmare.
Figure something out. That'd be awesome if we could do that. Yeah. On to the next one. What's next?
I'm already thinking about it. I'm like, I just saw someone do something. I'm like, oh, the boys will be down, especially it's on the East Coast.
Yeah, and you just signed up for a half marathon this weekend.
Yeah, somebody was like, hey, she's like, I'm doing this half marathon this weekend. You should do it with me. And I'm like, yeah, all right, sounds good. Let's do it. I'll sign up right now.
You're such a yes man. I'm the same exact way.
I'm like, why not? What else am I doing this weekend?
Why not?
I was going to run anyway, so let's just run 5 extra miles.
There you go.
Ain't nothing but a thing.
Yep.
I love that. When you said that, I was like, I'm not even surprised. I don't even like bat an eye to that.
It's feeling springy this morning.
But Andrew, do you have anything else that you wanted to ask or talk about?
No, that was really, I think we hit the nail on the head with who X is. I think everyone who listens now know who X is based off of everything he said and all the stories that we've said about him. So, I'm just very grateful to have X in our corner. Lucky to have you as a best friend for Lord knows how many years now, pretty much since sophomore year, probably for me, sophomore year, Jonah for freshman, but I don't know, who knows? Maybe even I knew you freshman year. There's a high likelihood of that. So it's been a long time now, and we're all grateful to have you. Those daily Snapchats of you doing backflips and all your craziness definitely paint a good picture of who you are. So.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll just leave it with one more thing. Is like one thing that I love one-liners. It's my thing. I just like constantly repeat these things throughout the day when any like weird thought creeps into my head. But one that's like stuck with me over the years is do today what others won't, so tomorrow you can do what others can't. And every single day, you just got to keep hammering. I love that one.
Cam Haynes, hammering, yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, boys. I can't wait to hit the race with you here pretty soon, Jonah. Definitely going to come down. I'll be in Florida, it's not really close to you. How far is Orlando from you?
2 hours.
Yeah, I'll be in Orlando for a week.
You were just on a cruise, weren't you?
Yeah, I took my kids on a Disney cruise.
Yeah, I think we were trying to figure something out there, but it was too difficult. I think you probably flew home right away. Everyone leaves Jacksonville with the cruises. They usually will typically, there's so many cruise ships that come through. This is like a starting point for a lot of people. So
out of Port Canaveral. But yeah, I'll send you those dates, man. We'll have to get some training. We'll be there for a week for our national sales conference. And I told everyone, I was like, no one distract me. I need to at least get some miles. I know we have things going on in conferences they're a good networking opportunity and there's some drinking, but we're going to get it in.
Let's get a 30-miler in while you're around.
I'm holding you to it.
All right. Hey, I'm always down for a good time.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming on, X. I think Andrew and I can definitely agree. You're definitely one of none. That's for sure. And it's an honor to have you as a friend and a good friend of ours, and to have you in our circle. Looking forward to that Ironman. But appreciate your time. And that's all I got. Andrew, you good?
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We appreciate y'all. Keep sharing the podcasts with your friends. Share it on social media. We appreciate that. It's how people find out about us. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next pod, X. Thank you, brother.
All right, boys.
Peace.
I got that dog.